Mrs. Chairwoman, I think we should just go ahead and start the meeting, and I can start doing a presentation on the plans when we're ready for that.
Okay.
But the first, if you have the agenda, first thing is like the approval of the minutes, and let's go with that stuff for now.
There you go, you got it. Good evening, everyone. I would like to officially call the meeting to order at 7:07 PM. At this time, I would ask that you please review the minutes that were distributed ahead of the meeting electronically. I'll give you a few moments to review the minutes.
Yay. Very good. I bet. We're just doing the minutes right now.
At this time, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Question?
No question, but please make sure you're turning your microphones on when you're speaking so it's captured for the minutes. So Mr. Wilson made the motion and Ms. Stein seconded.
No question, the motion pass. At this time, we will have a presentation, Don't Reinvent the Wheel, Comp Plan Comparisons and Ideas from Other Towns by Savannah. I wasn't sure if you were ready.
We're just going to take a moment to hook up. I think we need to.
Okay.
Is it better to plug in my computer or USB? Okay, I can do that.
Could you do it on that? Ship to hook up.
So
Didn't need to
our
change.
system isn't going to allow an outside computer to log on.
I have a USB too.
We can't take USBs. Can you email one of us the
No.
I emailed it to
presentation?
Mike earlier.
Mike, do you have it?
I don't have. You email it again to.
Let me see. Yeah.
Oh. Oh, yeah, we could, yeah.
Katie, do you have an extra puck that you can give to Savannah? Or do we just have the one? Okay.
Hi, this is Mike Fortner again. I just wanted to ask if anyone else had trouble getting the link to the 5 plans that was like the file. Did anyone have trouble with that? I know one person that had some trouble. I just wanted to see if that was effective or if it was just a roadblock. Do you want to just get like blocked from being able to come in? Oh, so you was able to look at those, okay. But the one to it was a file to the plans, like Ithaca, and that didn't work?
Yeah. This
The one titled
Yeah.
Exhibits.
This one right here in the middle, this exhibit one,
Yeah,
that did not work.
okay.
And then these.
Okay.
I think it was a permissions issue because mine said access denied.
Okay.
I said the same thing.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. So we're going to spoon feed you these plans, and we can even just bring them on and scroll through them. Again, it was just a kind of a general overview, and maybe I'll just try to email you the PDFs at some point so you can look at them for for future reference.
Got it.
There you are.
All right, sorry about the delay on that, everyone. So as Mike was starting to queue up today, for today's conversation, because we're still at the beginning of the process, we wanted to give you guys an introduction to some other comprehensive plans, mostly regional to this area, but some of them do delve a bit further away. So just to give an overview, we took a look at 5 different communities, and we'll kind of get into the reasons as to why we chose these ones as we go through it. But just to get a sampling of how other places outside of Delaware do their comprehensive plans. And so you can take a look at how far we went. Some of the closest communities that we chose to take a look at were Kennett Square and Westchester, which were brought up in some of the early visioning conversations as communities that other Newark residents aspire to be similar to. We also took a look at other college towns that are somewhat regional, such as Charlottesville, Virginia, and Ithaca, New York, that also exhibit good design practices and have some similar demographic numbers to Newark. And then we went a little bit further to Cincinnati, Ohio. That is where I'm from originally, just south of there in Kentucky. And so it was a comprehensive plan that I'm familiar with. And it's a little bit older than the other ones we took a look at, but they had a really robust engagement approach. And they took a different kind of spin than you typically see just meeting the requirements of a comp plan. So this is the demographic comparison of all of our communities. You can see the city of Newark has a population of about 30,000. And then the other communities that we compared kind of vary. And so the closest community geographically, Kennett Square, only has 6,000 residents, Westchester 19,000, Charlottesville a little bit larger than Newark at 45,000. Ithaca, again, being a really good comparison with a similar kind of population according to the census. And then Cincinnati, the urban population there being 10 times the size of Newark at 300,000. The median age in Newark is 22. Again, Ithaca is a really close profile to that, with 23.6 being their median age. Other communities faring a little bit older, more in line with the national average. So Kennett Square at 38.5, Westchester 24.5, again, similar to Newark, Charlottesville 32.9, and Cincinnati at 33. Poverty rates across the board, see that Newark is 27.1%, Kennett Square 4.51%, Westchester jumps up to 18, Charlottesville 22, Ithaca 28, and Cincinnati 24.5. I think that's one of those considerations that when we talk about the student populations, of course, we have to keep in mind. So you can see Kennett Square, the one community that we have included in here that doesn't have a college or university, and really a small population skews the poverty rate down. Median income, though, is very comparable across the communities, 71,000 at Newark, and 74,000 at Kennett Square, 81 in Westchester, 69,000 in Charlottesville. Ithaca jumps down quite a bit, 48,000. Their median income in Cincinnati, 51. Median property values, Newark in the middle at 357,600. The lowest being Cincinnati, $215,300 median property value, and then the highest, Westchester, 481. You can see the rest kind of fall in there. And then the last demographic that we compared across the board was the percent of a minority race. And Newark, again, somewhat in the middle, but towards the bottom, 34.1% of the population. Kennett Square, 50% of their population qualifies as minority. Westchester, 28.6%. Charlottesville, 35.6%. Ithaca, 37.2%. And Cincinnati, 52%. So again, as we get into comparing the community's different comprehensive plans, the demographics are just important to keep in mind, especially when we compare communities that might be 10 times the size or a fifth of the size. So the first comprehensive plan we took a look at, and Mike can share all of these resources after the meeting so you guys can dive deeper into them, and the next meeting we can follow up on some of the things you thought were the best takeaways from each of them. But the community of Kennett Square, they began their comprehensive plan, I believe in 2011. It was adopted in January 2013. It was led by a task force that was mainly made up of their planning commission members, but they did appoint some also from like their historic commission, their historic Kennett Square organization. That was actually their Main Street program originally, and they shifted it to kind of focus more on their historic attributes within the community and how they tied into preserving the downtown feel. For each of the communities, we did want to take a look at what the street view looks like at their like Main Street, again, just to provide a comparison for you all. So that is one of the main thoroughfares in Kennett Square. Their plan is 294 pages in length. So again, as you guys get into them and see, you can kind of compare. Some of them are a little bit cumbersome to get through. Some are a little bit easier for people to read and engage with. This is their table of contents. They had 13 different chapters within their comprehensive plan. A lot of these chapters are the typical ones that you would also see in Delaware and what is required from the state. In their public engagement process, they had 2 public meetings and 1 public hearing. They were kind of advertised through typical means, the borough website, local news and newsletters, as well as targeted invitations. Their goals and objectives were built upon from previous plans, and they had an issue identification exercise that they did with their task force to really see what do we need to build upon, what is still relevant. And then within their chapter organization, each one of them took a look at a topic area inventory. So what is the existing conditions? And then what is the plan for that chapter? What are the objectives and recommendations for the next 10, 20 years? Some of the recommendations from Kennett Square that might be applicable to Newark, you guys might like and want to explore further in phase 2 of this process. Apply to housing. So they encourage volunteerism with local groups to provide housing rehabilitation services to low-income and elderly homeowners. They had a recommendation to support zoning and subdivision ordinance requirements and incentives for development or redevelopment of housing that met green standards, something I know you guys are already doing, and support programs offered through the Kennett Area Square Senior Center and other organizations that provide services to senior citizens to age in place and remain in their own homes. You know, a couple of topics that we've heard brought up in the visioning, and They just wanted to formalize that relationship with the service provider in their area. Another topic area that jumped out to us as we were looking through it was street trees and urban greening. Of course, noting the importance of the natural resources to the city of Newark. So one recommendation was to install tree plantings along priority roadways, particularly to create urban greenways along segments that connect parks to other green spaces. So that could include a mapping exercise to identify where there are green spaces within the community and then connecting them by corridors to prioritize adding to the greenery that you already have instead of just filling in spots based on development. And then historic preservation. We had that area noted from the state as something that Newark might want to explore further. So we pulled that from Kennett Square. They continue to award property owners or volunteers who have made significant contributions to historic preservation in the borough. So they actually have an annual award that they like to give out to citizens who are contributing to the historic atmosphere. And then they make use of historic marker programs to recognize sites and structures and events. So again, just kind of ways to incentivize. One of the areas that they also dove into that was kind of special was native plants. They really went in depth about encouraging the community to use native plants and requiring it from new developments that come into the community. And not only did they require it, but they then, provided lists to the developers of what native plants are recommended in the area, pictures and such, and how they should be maintained and where they should be planted. So that helped to make it easy. So the next community that we took a look at was Westchester, Pennsylvania, just a little bit further away. Westchester's comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016. Again, it was led by a task force. That task force was appointed by the Borough Council, and it represented different sectors of the borough. Their plan, as opposed to about 300 pages, was actually 72 pages long. Student enrollment at Westchester University is 17,000, so you guys can compare that to University of Delaware, 24,000. Again, that's one of their streetscape areas. Westchester had a nice call out in graphic to kind of their plan development process. They began with the community vision and then dovetailed that into developing overarching goals and objectives. And then for each of those goals and objectives, they tailored those recommendations to urban priority focus areas. So they took a large approach from the beginning and then really got granular with their recommendations. And then that broke down to the implementation, talking about timeline. Will this be implemented in the next 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, et cetera? So their planning process, similar to Newark, about 2 years, began in 2014, and then it was adopted in 2016. They had 2 visioning sessions, stakeholder interviews, and public meetings. And something to note kind of about their table of contents. So they started with a bunch of different chapters. And I know it's a little hard to see on the screen here, but you guys can revisit this. But they then organized their 12 different chapter areas into 5 focus areas. Focus area 1 is community and economic vitality. Focus area 2 is environmental sustainability. Focus area 3, preservation of historic character. Focus area 4, future enhancement areas. And focus area 5, Westchester University. So the first 3 of those were kind of pulled from their vision for the community and how they felt like each of the chapters, like energy, housing, then fit into those visions. And then they also added on with the future enhancement areas and wanting specifically to call out to Westchester University so that they could tailor recommendations just towards the student population and the university land. So as I stated, they really did focus on the relationship between the university students and the community. Student housing is definitely an issue that Westchester brought up. And from the residents that live there, they wanted to break up large concentrations of student housing. And I think at the same time, they wanted to integrate students into the community. So they took different approaches to work with the university to develop and enforce some neighborhood code of conduct, strict sanctions, tried not to just concentrate the university housing in certain pockets, but instead distribute it because understanding that they wanted the university to still continue to grow. One of the things that we also wanted to call out, after their comprehensive plan, or towards the end of it, they developed a story map. Again, and they kind of mapped out those different enhancement areas, but they tracked their recommendations as they were implemented afterwards. So you can see in the bottom here, there were a total of 119 actions that came out of their comprehensive plan. As of 2025, 71 of them, or about 60%, had not been started yet, but 24.4% were completed and 16% were partially completed. So another way to just kind of keep engaged with the community and report out the status of recommendations and actions as they're completed or not. Sometimes they just drop off because policies change. A couple of things to bring up that are differences between Chester County and Newcastle County. Kennett Square and Westchester are both Chester County communities. Chester County coordinates planning for the boroughs that belong to it. So part of that includes developing design guide resources and providing those to the communities to implement. And that this is an example of one. All right, moving north to Ithaca. So Ithaca has two different universities within it. Cornell University is 26,000 enrollment, similar size to University of Delaware. And then there's also Ithaca College with about 5,000 students. Their last comprehensive plan was adopted in 2015, and it was overseen by the city's comprehensive plan committee. Their plan length falls about in the middle of the last two at 154 pages. This is their table of contents. You can see some of the headers. They have land use, and then within land use get into like mixed use development, future land use, economic vitality, community livability, mobility and transportation, natural and cultural resources, sustainable energy, water and food systems. So these topics were derived, again, a similar process to one of the other plans I touched on, that they had 12 overarching chapters that they started with, but then they wanted to reorganize them. And so they developed these 6 different icons, or sorry, 7 different icons. And for each of the chapters, such as housing, when you get to the housing chapter, if you see a recommendation that applies also to the land use chapter or the economic vitality chapter, they use those icons to symbolize when it applies to multiple areas. So I thought that was a nice way to organize and show the overlap between the different disciplines that we are working with. So Ithaca, New York process, just to step back towards that, was a 4-year long process. It was quite involved. They have 20 different public meetings, 22 focus group meetings, and 8 open houses. It emerged from years of public input, and after that, it was refined by focus groups. The subcommittee developed the objectives and recommendations, and each chapter, again, ties back to the themes that guide the entire plan of sustainability, equity, and collaboration. Within the chapters, then they're divided into existing conditions, goals, and recommendations. Some of the recommendations that we thought might be good to consider for Newark: public safety, continuing efforts to educate residents on city ordinances, such as property maintenance, noise ordinances, and building a stronger neighborhood relationship between permanent and student residents. Economic development, working with higher ed institutions to address possible changes in the industry to retain economic benefits to the community and a thriving local higher education sector. Historic preservation, update the inventory of all historic and cultural resources and continue to designate resources as historically and architecturally significant. Explore the feasibility of a local carbon tax on demolitions or tax abatement incentives for reuse or rehabilitations. And cultural resources, encourage higher education institutions and community groups to hold cultural events off campus. Create a comprehensive map of art installations, theaters, museums, and other cultural and historic institutions. They also developed up kind of their future land use and their recommendations into 4 different focus areas, so 4 different geographic regions. Each of those areas were kind of defined by their unique opportunities for development or redevelopment, and they required kind of special planning for that infrastructure to be able to to provide the needed infrastructure for the redevelopment to occur. So going south, Charlottesville, Virginia. Charlottesville Comprehensive Plan was adopted in 2021. It was led by their Planning Commission and on the shorter side a bit at 121 pages. For comparison, UVA is 26,000. They began their update in 2017 and then adopted it in 2021. So again, it was a long process with 3 different tiers of community engagement. The community engagement was kind of built around a similar model that we're doing with the existing conditions, visioning early on, then getting in more to refining the goals and finally adopting those final goals. Throughout it, they also worked on a housing needs assessment, socioeconomic and housing market analysis, and that was a similar ongoing effort. They also had conducted virtual office hours where staff were available to discuss the plan during a 2.5-hour period via the phone or Zoom. However, they did report out from those virtual office hours that only 1 participant actually came over the 3 hours or 3 different sessions offered. So while we were reading through, it seemed like, oh, that's a great idea, but perhaps not exactly where you're meeting the public where they're already at. This is an example of one of their pages that discusses housing goals. You can see goal 1, funding commitments, goal 2, diverse housing throughout the city. They use icons throughout their plan to kind of symbolize when something is equity and opportunity. They use these arrows like it's something that can build people up. When it's a goal that talks about environmental sustainability and stewardship, they use this light bulb icon, and when it's a goal or a recommendation that talks about connections and access, that is this kind of connected little icon. And those tie back again to their guiding principles. So in the visioning phase, they identified these 5 guiding principles that each of their recommendations, they would make sure tied back to one of them for their community. The organization of their document, so again, they started with the 5 guiding principles and then get into topic-specific chapters. Each of the topic-specific chapters has its own vision, and then they get into goals and strategies for that topic area, such as transportation. And then at the end, they have an implementation chapter, which is something similar that I've done with communities in Delaware, where you cite all of the recommendations for the different chapter areas, maybe in a matrix or a table that's easy to see, and you prioritize which one should be done short-term, medium-term, long-term, and what kind of agencies or funding sources are out there to help you accomplish them. Some of the applicable recommendations to consider from Charlottesville include ensuring lower income households in the disability community have access to adult learning and employment opportunities, job training, healthy food sources, and public amenities. Encourage the incorporation of food access avenues, examples, affordable stores, agricultural space such as greenhouses, school and community gardens, in all housing developments to the maximum extent feasible to be more sustainable and to increase access to food. Entrance corridors, which is kind of talking about design elements for gateways to a community. Within entrance corridors, encourage placemaking elements and look for opportunities to support community-centered destinations. So Charlottesville took this recommendation further, and they have designed their own entrance corridor design standards. Again, to encourage placemaking and set the destination off through the gateway. They encourage the continuity of land use, design, and pedestrian orientation along those corridors. And then historic resource protection, continue the entrance corridor review board and Board of Architectural Review's annual awards that recognize exceptional entrance corridor designs. So again, this was similar to like Westchester, or they were awarding good historic resource or businesses that did good to upkeep the historic assets that are on their business. Charlottesville also has small area plans beyond their comprehensive plan, and so they have master plans for these additional areas that are defined in other colors below. All right, now moving west towards Cincinnati. So Cincinnati's comprehensive plan was adopted in 2015. It was overseen by the city's comp plan committee, and it's 235 pages, pretty cumbersome. It has, University of Cincinnati has a student enrollment of 43,000, and Xavier University has a student enrollment of 6,000. So they initiated their plan in 2009, and it was adopted in 2012. Their steering committee was actually comprised of 40 people. But again, it's a very, very large community, and they had 12 working groups, one working group for each element area of the plan. The working groups did a bulk of the work in developing the goals and action steps. They had a lot of different community events. One featured to reach youth was called Planting for Our Future. And over 600 local students were given terracotta flower planters, where they could paint their fears and concerns for the city on the inside of the pot and their visions and dreams on the outside of it. That was expanded to senior citizens as well after they saw a lot of success with it. To reach 18 to 30-year-olds, they had a special course at the University of Cincinnati where students were encouraged to write their own chapter for Plan Cincinnati, their comprehensive plan. Similar to a couple of our other communities, they had 12 elements, so 12 different chapters, really, and they were all integrated into 5 initiative areas that they identified. So you can see one of the initiative areas that they identified as being important to the culture of Cincinnati was to be able to compete with other jurisdictions across the country. So they integrated their chapters of economic development and business retention, arts and cultural, fiscal impact, and institutions within that initiative area. They use a similar strategy where those 12 different technical chapters, or what they call as elements, then they symbolize through icons. And within each of the initiative area sections, when they touch on a recommendation that applies to any of those, then they include those icons so you can clearly see. For each of their action steps, they also assign whether it is short range, mid range, or long range. And they clearly, at the beginning of the document, which is something that I really like, is they spell out all of those different kind of definitions of what short range means, 1 to 3 years. Here's an example of one of those chapters. Provide quality, healthy housing for all income levels. That's just one recommendation. And you can see it touches on 4 of their different chapter areas, such as sustainability, land use, and equity. Now, within that, they have a more detailed strategy to improve the quality and number of moderate to high income rental and homeowner units within the city. And that's to help grow the population that'll attract more moderate and high income families. In the short range, they'll remove barriers and encourage development of high income units. And in mid range, they'll direct funding to develop more direct funding to create more mixed income developments and expand options for home ownership. And then after they detail out, assist low and moderate income renters to make the transition to home ownership successful. So that's just one recommendation. And of course, you know, they have different issues. When we looked at the median housing price in Cincinnati, we saw it was $200,000 as opposed to Newark, where it's more like $400,000 or $450,000 already. But just an example of how you can start with a more overarching goal or recommendation, and they get more granular within each of those. And then they also identify on each of those pages for the recommendations who are appropriate partners, such as the Hamilton County Continuum of Care for Homeless People and city agencies listed. They also had an interactive performance tracking webpage for after implementation of the plan. So you can go in here and click down into any of the initiative areas, and it'll show you in this table below kind of a database of all the recommendations that were in there. What are the updates on them to date? Have they been implemented? Is someone currently working on them? And they add a lot of detail and keep it up to date. Here are a couple more goals that were from Cincinnati that, again, we just pulled out different examples of what they included, their table of contents. And then finally, wanted to kind of digest a little bit with some of the similarities and differences amongst those 5. Before I get into that, are there any questions about what I just shared with the 5? Okay. All right. So some of the similarities, so Kennett Square, Westchester, and Ithaca all had focus areas or character areas, which are portions of the municipality geographically that have a cohesive or unique land use zoning composition. Ithaca and Charlottesville have topic chapters for community engagement between the public and the city. So they actually broke it out into its own chapter. Not all communities did that. Some just described it as part of their process. But Charlottesville is a good example. They had a lot of really good resources to help other communities kind of look at their engagement strategies. Ithaca and Charlottesville's guiding principles overlap. They were very similar: sustainability, equity, and collaboration. And Charlottesville had additional guiding principles beyond those three of community, culture, and unity, and connections and access. Some of the differences, so Charlottesville and Cincinnati's topic areas are more focused on visions, goals, and recommendations. They're a little bit more about how the community wants to grow as opposed to reporting out on what is the status of utilities, transportation, etc. Ithaca, Westchester, and Kennett have existing conditions within each of their topic areas. They decide to break that out. I think all of them kind of described, but especially Cincinnati really did not focus too much on the existing conditions, but instead the community that they want to grow into. The only plan that really cited the primary concern as the local university and the dynamic between the community and that university was Westchester. Cincinnati's plan is organized by initiative areas, where the other ones were a little bit more concrete type of elements or chapters. All right, so we were thinking to have a little bit more of a discussion today, but I think if you guys haven't been able to have time to look through each of the comp plans yet, we can table a lot of that until next month. But from what was presented to you all tonight, you know, what kind of elements or what process portions stood out to you and you think we might want to adopt here in Newark? Or what aspects did you not like, if that was clear to you as well?
All but Cincinnati appear to have a main street similar to Main Street. Was that also one of the deciding factors for choosing, besides having universities?
I think it definitely was what kind of skewed towards, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I found the Westchester comp plan interesting in how they, I believe it was Westchester, have taken more of an approach of decentralizing student housing.
Yes.
That's definitely not the direction we've been heading in. So I would be interested in drilling down on that a little bit and seeing what's worked for them in that and where there may be challenges with that.
I also wrote down for Westchester, I'd like to know more about their neighborhood code of conduct with strict sanctions for poor behavior.
Yeah.
Because I think that is something we could potentially leverage. I wrote down, one of them had I thought it was great that they had a college, Cincinnati had a college course for the 18 to 30-year-olds. I
Yeah.
think that would work well here to foster better engagement between the community and the University of Delaware. And I do want to read them more, but I wrote down things that I like from all of them. And from Kennett Square, I wrote down the housing rehab with the volunteers.
Okay.
I think that could be a big opportunity for us here as well. And then the last thing I'll talk about was the plants for the students and the seniors. So I think there's just a lot of great ideas that were shared from each of the communities that we could learn from.
Good, yeah.
I also made note of, from the Westchester plan, the special section on the university. I thought that was interesting. And also I'm not sure if it was Westchester, if it was Ithaca, that talked about where they had the student housing. It wasn't just in one area. It was literally all over the entire city. And I think that's something we need to take a look at here as well.
Good. Anyone online? Chad, you can
I-
unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just realized that. Thank you. Quick question. So a couple of them were 10 years old or so now. Have they done an update or like a checkup on how they've worked?
They have not done an updated plan, so these are the latest plans. As I kind of touched on, some of them like Cincinnati, they have a continuous reporting out and they continuously do update their website. I think, Delaware is very unique in requiring their communities to update their comprehensive plan every 10 years. Most states do not. I think Cincinnati's last plan had been done in like the 90s, the early 90s or something. I don't know if you remember, Hannah. Yeah, so some places they really every 20 years or something might update their comp plan.
I think also Delaware is a little unusual in the 10-year visioning. Like I know a lot of communities, they may do 20, 25 years to get that kind of longer range goals and planning.
Right.
Sometimes I think Delaware's a little short in that, you're looking at it for 10 and then you're reviewing it every 5, and that, some of these things take a little time to evolve and come into fruition. And we can't necessarily get there in that period of time before we're jumping into it again. So I wouldn't necessarily say that some of these plans that are older mean that they're not necessarily up to date. It's more, some of it is just longer range goals and visioning depending on what their particular jurisdiction requires.
I had one other thought. Each of them seem to be able to narrow it down to focus areas. I am curious to know how they did that. So in our first meeting, I think we came up with about 25 different topics. So I'm interested to know what strategies were put in place for them to sort of narrow down to what their focus areas were.
Okay.
And if we could potentially leverage whatever
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah, we can take a deeper dive into that next month.
This is Mike Porter. I'd just like to, since I was able to actually, one of the few people that actually able to see all the plans, some of the style points that I picked out, I think Ithaca, for example, was a very slick document, lots of pictures, not a lot of words. It was very succinct, but I don't know that it was kind of vague also. Like, for example, they had, their goals, explore ways to incentivize landlords to reduce rental housing costs, but they had, the goals were like, were very aspirational, like there will be affordable housing for everybody kind of things. And I thought, that's more of an aspiration than a goal. I think like if a goal is something you can achieve, whereas that, you're not going to achieve that. But I did like the style of it and how succinct it was. The model that I thought was the most interesting was the Charlottesville, when you get a chance to look at these. What Charlottesville's did, if you look at a plan like ours or like Dover's, it's very, there's a lot of prose, long prose, paragraphs describing things. What Charlottesville tended to use more was more just bullet points. So they would take something like their green house gas initiative or something. They would bullet points, or their in their community profile is just like, we have 35,000 people, we have this many this minority and that minority, whatever, and just it was just very bullet rather than ours, which is a big paragraph on the racial composition of Newark. I don't know. I guess it's a preference thing, but I think you could get more information and less pages if you did like these kind of quick bullets. It seems like a lot of times we spend a lot on the prose, just how making these paragraphs flow well. Sometimes they kind of are, you're reading a paragraph and it's just not working, and you're like trying to how to make it like almost like a novel. You want a novel just to flow. If you do a bullet point thing, which a lot of them did, I think you can get around the need of composing all these complicated paragraphs.
I would agree with that, and it makes it more approachable to a broader audience of people, your document. Good.
Can I add something, please?
Yeah.
And not necessarily a reaction to each of the plans, but I feel the most connection, I think, with Charlottesville because of the similarities. So I maybe more of a question back to my, fellow committee members. Are there other places you visited or lived that you think Newark should aspire to be that could help us think about either what their plan looks like or what they're focused on?
I recently visited Beacon, New York. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to go there. I found it to be really charming. And the one thing that I noticed was the diversity and options that were available on their main street. So there were various food options. There were a couple of museums there. There were home stores, a bread shop, coffee shops, a green matcha shop, and then various fashion stores. There was a brewery. So, I mean, I visited there not intending to stay the entire day, but we spent the entire day there just walking up and down, in and out of the stores, just visiting all the shops. So I think that is something that we could aspire to be sort of like a destination where there's enough diversity. And there was quite a bit of variation in the age group as well. So there were seniors going into some of the shops, and I was with my daughters. One's in her mid-20s, one's 19, but we saw a lot of students. We also saw families. And they just had a little bit of everything. So I think if we could add some more diversity, I really enjoyed the time there. And I was pleasantly surprised by how many different types of shops and places that there were to go there. So I'll just share that.
All right. Any other thoughts from anyone?
Look, Lauren.
Hello everyone. So I know talking about other places, I went to college super close to Frederick, Maryland, which is one of the larger cities in Maryland. It's kind of like a bigger Newark, and they are also home to a college called Hood College, and they have a downtown that honestly reminds me a lot of Newark. We spent a lot of time there in college, and I've looked at their comprehensive plan, and I'll have to send it to you all because theirs was last updated in 2020, and I think there's a lot of similarities between Frederick, Maryland and Newark.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that'd be a good one to add. All right, any other questions on the case studies, requests for us to follow up on next month? Okay. So next item on the agenda, I think, is the public workshop. The public workshop, drop-in public workshop is going to be next week on Wednesday from 4:30 to 7:30 here, council chambers. I think Mike sent out the flyer to everyone. Did everyone receive that? All right, please come and invite your neighbors. We're going to have some interactive exhibits. We're going to do the community conversations at the kitchen table like we did at Community Day, have some maps that people can mark up, and different exhibits about the existing conditions in Newark. And then we'll also have some kids activities as well. So if you have kids or again, your neighbors or anything, and they're worried, we will have something to distract them for 15, 20 minutes or so while you give us feedback. So if a couple people can plan to volunteer to be there the night from the committee on site, that always helps us out. we will have plenty of staff from Rossi Group in the city on site. But again, you guys are kind of our anchors to reach out to the community. So if your neighbor sees you there, it helps encourage conversation. Anything else on the workshop, Mike?
No, that covers it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Okay. And then the other thing we had on our agenda for tonight was to touch on the meetings in a box materials. Were folks able to access those?
Probably not.
Probably the same issue, probably. Okay. All right. Well, I have those items I can plug in and bring up to go ahead and show you guys. But we developed last month meetings in a box that we had talked about at our last meeting, and a lot of folks were interested. Yeah, is there a question before I get into?
I was just saying it did open. The meetings in a box did open.
Oh, great. Good.
did.
Okay, good. So I don't have to go individually through those. Within the meetings in a box material, so there are set up, there's an instruction sheet, there's a presentation, a participant worksheet, an email sign-up sheet, flyers, a map of Newark, and a facilitator worksheet. I think, Mike, do you have physical copies?
I do have one box here, yeah.
All right, so Mike has one toolkit, one meeting in a box available here at City Hall. My recommendation was that, one person at a time, or possibly if we make two toolkits, checks it out. You check it out for the week that you're going to have an HOA meeting or your local organization meeting, and you want to share 5-10 minutes it should take you to run through the meeting in a box with your local group. And then you'll have the participants fill out the worksheet. You'll also fill out your facilitator worksheet, and then you'll turn it back into the city. We'll tabulate and collect everything in this phase 1 of engagement.
Just a question on that with the Newark map. So I do have an example box here. Did you envision the map being like a poster size? Should we make it a poster size or
12 by 18
12 by
is
18?
what we had designed it to be,
Okay.
just as a reference so people could discuss.
Okay, so that's what I did
But
make it.
not to mark
I
up.
did make it that way.
Yeah,
That's how
okay.
big I made it. All right.
Perfect, yeah.
And with the participation, those are, it's basically it's a SWOT analysis.
Yes.
And I blew that up into like a poster size too, or you can make it, I made like several, like 20, like just what you would give to people. Is that how you envision it? You give it to them and they fill out on their own?
Yeah. So let me pull open. Take a look at it. So the materials were all designed with flexibility in mind, depending on what kind of atmosphere you're going to be in. If it is easiest for you to facilitate one conversation with a group of 6 people where you are gathering their SWOT feedback and writing it on a poster board, that is one option. Another option can be leaving it on their seat if it's more of a dinner meeting or something, and asking people to fill it out as they have the opportunity, and to turn it back into you on like just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So this is the major feedback we're looking for. It aligns with what we're doing in phase 1. When we get into phase 2, we can rework the meetings in a box to align more with what phase 2 is seeking, actual feedback on specific recommendations. And then I'll open up the facilitator worksheet to show you all that one. So this would be completed by you, the steering committee member, after your event. What is your name? Where was the location of your event? And what was the organization that met? How many participants were present there? And when was the date and time that it occurred? And you can just notate some key takeaways or topics of discussion. Again, if everything is already covered on the participant worksheets, you can just notate that. But we wanted to give this in case the worksheets weren't easy for them to fill out. The instructions for you are in there in the instruction sheet. And there's also a presentation that can be used. But again, if there is not the opportunity for you to have a PowerPoint behind you, the presentation could be just spoken about. It's a pretty quick presentation, or it could be printed and handed out as well. 7 slides. Any questions on the meetings in a box?
Or anything maybe we missed that we could put in there?
Yeah.
I may have missed it. Can you give us the time frame with which you'd like to have this information back?
So phase 1 is going to go through the end of January. So if there is an opportunity that you have between now and January, reach out to Mike to coordinate that. But then, anything after that, we'll just update for the phase 2. We'll continue, if you have individual opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
As we're presenting this information, does it matter if we identify if the individuals live in Newark? And the reason why I'm asking that is I see an opportunity where I may be able to present this soon. Some of the individuals live in Newark. Some of them come to Newark, previously lived in Newark.
Right.
Are heavily engaged and involved. So the perspective may be different. I
Right,
don't know
right.
if that's important to differentiate between an actual resident versus, someone who's just associated or affiliated with Newark.
Right. So far in phase 1, we have not been capturing that differentiating factor.
Okay.
I think in phase 2, we will, and we're planning on having a survey to drill down even closer on where people live within the city.
Okay.
If colloquial, if your organization's general mix up or
Yes.
makeup, that would be something that would be great to note in your facilitator worksheet. that
Okay.
Generally, these are residents. Generally, these are people that have businesses in Newark, or, any of those characteristics that can kind of help us understand your setting are good. Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, the online survey does say, do you live here, do you work here? Yeah.
It asks, you live. It just asks about live. Can you identify your cross streets? And it's optional as of right now. We didn't want it to deter anyone from participating, but yeah, we do have that online.
And Allison, I think you're thinking of the parking survey.
I was gonna say, I just.
Because that one-
Another, okay.
The Parking Advisory Committee survey does ask, what your relationship to Newark is. Like, do you live here, work here? Are you a university student? Are you a visitor? That kind
Okay,
of-
but they both had surveys, right? I'm not crazy?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So I filled out 2 surveys.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, I think that, you have one more?
No, I'm done.
Okay. That was all I have prepared for tonight. Mike, is there anything else you'd like to remind the committee or touch on?
I don't think of anything on the agenda. I think if you, Mrs. Chairwoman, you good to public comment, or we can go with that if you'd like.
Yes, at this time, do we have anyone online or present who would like to make public comment? If so, please take yourself off mute. If you're present, please make your way to the podium. Any questions from our community? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Don't forget to turn the mic on. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I think this is really exciting. I was in the Planning Commission about 30 years ago, and I'm really pleased to see this kind of action going on. I think the people that you chose, excellent, excellent. And I just thought there might be also a possibility, because these things take time, to figure out some things right away that the community could begin to do that would go in the direction that we wanted to go in. For instance, one of the things that I've been wanting the city to step forward for the 40 years I've lived here is the idea of providing services for people to educate them on how they can take their property, planting native plants, work together on the street, on the block with other people, so they begin to come out of their silos and work together as a community and create an ecosystem in one summer that would help all the creatures that are going extinct on the planet. That would be so exciting. And I'm thinking having to do a general plan, waiting until it's all perfect before some things are begun. Maybe that's how they work. But I would love to see conversations about what can happen right now. And all the people that would be so excited about those opportunities. And then that would also help the city grow more of a way that they're actually connecting to people. Because I often don't find out about things. I'm not on social media and stuff like that. I have to check again with Michael to find out when this next meeting is coming up and how to get people to come. Because I know when there was something recently at a park, and the city actually announced through a telephone call. I got a call that was at home that they were looking for volunteers to come. And I thought, wow, you mean the city can actually contact people like that on the phone and let them know about something? Would that be possible to do even for like a meeting coming up? For people to get a notice from the city saying, here's what we're doing. We're starting this incredible process. We'd love to have as many people be engaged as possible and let them have a little phone message, because that to me meant so much, because I don't live on the computer. I do everything, pretty much all my wildlife habitat gardening, everything by myself. And I'm very eager to find people who are interested in community, helping each other out, working together as a group, and creating less of a siloed, for me, experience of Newark. And also, I just wanted to say that when I first moved here, gosh, was it already 1975? I thought the downtown was fascinating. There were many local artists, wonderful shops, and gradually that all changed as big businesses came in, big box stores, and as the university began building high rises for their students. So I think it's important to have that kind of awareness in the conversation as well, that so far for me, I would have liked to have seen a lot of those qualities preserved. But I'm not sure this kind of conversation was going on then. So I very much appreciate it. And I think we can look back on what this community used to offer on Main Street, for instance, what you were talking about in that town. What did you say that town was? Beacon, B-E-A-C-O-N? Yeah. You can certainly tell right away when you're in a place like that. And then, frankly, I don't go to Main Street. It's mainly eateries, a lot of food I wouldn't want to eat. And I think we have a lot of people that have experienced living here in earlier years that really appreciated things that have begun to disappear. So I think it's important to value that as well. And in the conversations, when you have people coming for some of these workshops, hopefully they can talk about their experiences that have happened here, how to encourage that. And at least some of the high rises that have been built on Main Street, they've saved the more historic buildings in the front. I appreciate that. But just because things are going in a certain direction, how do you turn that around and value an earlier, healthier, for me, business, community, place where you really, I mean, some of you might even remember, there used to be a theater on Main Street. I knew the person who, they showed old films. I remember once Kurosawa film. Everybody in the film spoke like that. Even the princess talked like that. And when I came out and I heard the English language, I thought, wow, this language sounds like rippling water. Da 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 da. And that was so beautiful. That theater on Main Street, I knew the person, David Robertson, who would make the cookies. And he'd bring them, and you could buy them very inexpensively. They were healthily made. I knew the person who was running the films upstairs. It was very hands-on. And I'm probably one of the more ancient people in town, but those things mean a lot. And I think we can go in that direction to value qualities that have been here really and allow them to come back to life. And basically, I want to be sure that what Michael was talking about, this event coming up, how to reach out to enough people to have them come. I don't know how to help with that, but if there is any way that people could get phone messages, wow, that would be great. Or even maybe an email message from the city or something. I don't know. I don't know how it works. But I wouldn't have found out about it if I hadn't gone to the Conservation Advisory Commission meeting yesterday. I wouldn't have known. So that's enough for me. But I'm excited that there's so many people involved in this. Lovely to see all of you on the screen as well. And know that each of you have gifts, have experiences, and sharing with each other and with people like our beautiful guides here. So much work they've already put into this. And collaboration is everything, is everything. And sharing with each other means so much. Out of that, incredible creative ideas emerge that you might not even think are possible. So I thank you. I'll push this little button.
If you are not inspired by that, bravo. Are there any further public comments?
I was going to say, just to follow up,
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Mike's been working with our communications team on getting the word out for the workshop. And I have just sent our Chief Community Engagement Officer a message specifically about distributing it through the Inform Me system, which is the system that makes the phone calls. So there are some parameters around what they'll send out and what they won't, but we'll definitely have that discussion to see if it's possible.
We're sending out through Constant Contact. Our public input's now connected with the mailing list of public input.
Okay.
So that's about 5,000 people or 5,000 emails right there. Well, on the public input link. And since you said you didn't use computers, I know I sent you the flyer, but you can call in and you can make public comments by voicemail, and it goes into the computer, and then it'll give me a transcript, and I'll be able to get things like that. You just type in the number and then the code for the comp plan, which is on the flyer. And I'll get you a flyer for the public workshop next week. I have several here for everyone that wants it here.
All right, we have one final topic, which is our next meeting date. which is December 11th at 7 p.m. here in council chamber. Are there any further questions or comments? All right, then I'll call for adjournment. Thank you, everyone, for your time, your attention, and your input, and your sacrifice for being here this evening. Have a great night, everyone.
There's no football games on or baseball. There's no.